I'm joined by a former fighter, fought for a light heavyweight belt. He's a philanthropist, he's a fan, and he's one of the best trainers in the game. John Iceman Scully, thank you so much again for taking some time.
Goodbye. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I met you about a decade ago when Chad Dawson fought Andre Ward. Chad Dawson was then the light heavyweight champion. You were training him. He moved down to 168 to fight Andre Ward. I spent some time, I was with HBO then as a producer, so I got to spend some time with you guys in camp. You were training in Vegas for that fight. Can you tell me some of your thoughts about that? And were you surprised that Chad went down to 168 for that fight?
Yes, I was surprised to say the least. If you watch the Hopkins fight, the rematch, when we won, I'm in the ring with him. He's doing the interview, how they do over the loudspeaker. So, everybody in the audience can hear his answers. And so they said, what's next? What's next for you? And he goes, Andre Ward.
I mean, I would love a fight with Andre Ward. I mean, I think that makes for a great fight.
Super middleweight champion.
Super middleweight champion. I mean, I can make 168, or we could do it at 175 catch weight. It doesn't matter to me.
And immediately I turned to the guy next to me and I said, what did he say? Andre Ward. And I'm like, Andre Ward's 168. So, they said, oh, we can make the weight. It'll be no problem. And, it sounded good. But when I went in the back room after I talked to the nutritionist and the strength coach, I said, look, just us here. I mean, can he really make 168? I mean, he hasn't been 168 in years and he's getting older. And, they said, oh, yeah, no problem, this and that. And we'll do this and we'll do that. And, it didn't turn out that way. No, taking nothing from Andre Ward at all. Great fighter. But Chad, what he had to go through to make 168 was horrible. And if you notice, I said it right after the fight, because we said we parted ways after. And I said, listen, you can argue all you want, but I bet you never go down to 168 again. I bet you're not going to do that again. So that tells the story right there. 168 was not the good move.
Was that your last fight with Chad? Did you guys kind of break clean after that?
Nah, I tell you what, it's a weirdest thing. I've known Chad since he was like 11 years old. I saw him, obviously after the fight, in the dressing room or whatever. I didn't speak to him again until 2 years ago.
Wow.
And he came up as a sparring partner for Betabayev in Canada. And I had to drive him to the, I was in the same complex with him. So I had to give him his food money and stuff. And so we ended up having to talk. But that was the first time I ever talked to him. If it wasn't for that, I still would have never met him or talked to him or anything.
You mentioned Betabayev. You're not his lead trainer, but what's your involvement with him?
I guess you'd say assistant trainer. I go to training camps with him and work with him on different strategies, and I give my input and what I think on a particular opponent. And it's a team effort. We have Mark Ramsey and myself, and Mark is very open to that. It was he's the one who called me about coming in 6 years ago. So it's worked out great so far.
He just defended his belt a few weeks ago. Had a horrific cut. Talk to me about that. Was there ever any danger of that fight being stopped? At least, did you feel like that in the corner?
I'll tell you what, two things. One is I absolutely thought they were going to stop the fight. I mean, instantly. That cut was, up close and personal. That's probably the worst cut I've ever seen, ever. On TV, probably the only cut I've seen worse was coincidentally Badu Jack when he also fought Marcus Brown.
Right.
So I didn't. If you asked me after that round and said bet $100, are they going to stop this fight sooner or later? I would have said, oh, of course. Like, there's no way. But the thing was, part of it, I believe, is we had a really good referee, and Arthur responded like nothing happened. He didn't have any. Like a lot of guys would have tried to get the referee to stop. You know what I mean? They would have thrown subtle hints. But Arthur stepped his game up instantly, fought with purpose, fought, amazingly. It was probably maybe the best performance of his career in totality. So, I was a little bit worried, but Arthur, really showed something.
I guess you never know how a fighter's going to react to adversity until it happens. So what do you think that says about him? You just mentioned that he was so calm when he had that cut. He didn't panic. What does that say about him as a fighter? Because people throw out the word great, 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 but it's when you overcome adversity, that's I think when you really show something.
Right. Yeah, no, it's amazing. For him to come through like that, you never know. A lot of guys say, oh, if I was cut, I would do this. And if I got hit with a good shot, I would do that. I said, listen, I don't care who you are. You don't know what you would do until the moment arrives. And plenty of people have done the opposite of what they thought they would do. Arthur is a special, and I had a feeling, I know him. I mean, he's a special human being. He's got a special mentality. And so him coming through in that manner didn't surprise me at all.
I wanted to talk about something that I know is very important to you, and it's helping former fighters.
Right.
A few weeks ago, Donald Curry's son sent out a tweet that his dad was having a hard time health-wise because of boxing.
Right.
And you were one of the first people that responded. You've done some work to help fighters out. And matter of fact, I bought a autographed picture of Emil Griffith from you. I love what you're doing for the fighters. How did that come about, and why do you do it?
To tell you the truth, as I recall, a few years ago, I believe it was Benitez. It was either Benitez or Gerald that I had heard was in some trouble.
These two fighters in particular you're talking about Wilfred Benitez and Gerald McClellan, who, Benitez is an all-time great. Obviously, for people who don't know, McClellan was a former champion. These are the guys you're talking about, right?
Right, 100%. And they put out an alert like, oh, they need a couple $100 to pay for this or whatever it was. And so I had some stuff in my house, some memorabilia, and I said, wow, I realize I know a lot of people in the game, a lot of great fighters and whatever. So I have posters and pictures and different things. And I said, man, I could get, Roy Jones, James Tony, I could get them to sign this, and I could probably sell it for $100, $200, $300 and help these guys out. So I had pictures, and I have like cards, trading cards, different things. And so I would just call guys and go, hey, if I send you a card, would you sign it and mail it back to me? And then I can sell it and give the money to Wilfred or Gerald or whoever. And so I basically went like that. And, and it's been good. And I realize these guys need it. But I've also had a lot of help. I've talked to a lot of people. I'll give an example. There was a guy, and I'm not going to mention his name just because he didn't say so, but I got the impression he doesn't want the credit. But I'll say this. One time, it was wintertime, and Wilfred, the generator, they needed a generator in the house because there was a storm or something in Chicago or Puerto Rico at the time, and he needed a generator. So I went on my Twitter and I said, all right, I want to start raising money. We're going to need and it was like $3,000. I said, we're going to need like $3,000 to help Wilfred Benitez get this generator. He needs it. And a couple minutes later, a big name in the boxing world, not a fighter, but a big name in the boxing world, messaged me. He goes, oh man, how much you need? How much does it cost? I said, I was like $3,200. 5 minutes later, Wilfred Benitez's sister calls me and says, hey, this guy, so-and-so, he just paid for the whole thing. He just paid for the generator. And I've run into a lot of instances like that where people have been really wanting to help. So it's made it easier.
I know you don't do this for credit for yourself, but I love what you do, and a lot of people love it. I guess my question to you, and the issue I have with boxing is, some friends of mine say, why are there so many champions? Boxing is a business. In these sanctioning bodies, a champion has to pay a sanctioning fee to the organization to defend their belt. So sanctioning bodies make money. why aren't these sanctioning bodies, why isn't there something in place where fighters get help? Because there's no pension, there's no health insurance. Why don't the boxing commissions get together and do something to help the fighters?
I guess I've been hearing about that idea for years and years and years, and it's just never been able to take hold. I think, I'm guessing, I think a lot of it an aspect of it might be where, like, say you talk about Major League Baseball, football, basketball, guys in the league, they had to do a lot to get to the league, to get there. You got to go through a long process just to be the worst guy in the NFL. To be the worst guy, you've got to be awesome. You've got to be amazing, and you've got to be accomplished just to be the worst guy ever. You made it. In boxing, it's different. Guys turn pro, they shouldn't be pro. So
Right.
how they allot the money and who gets help and who doesn't, and who does this guy really deserve sport even though he turned pro because he was broke? You know what I mean? So there's issues like that probably that have something to do with it. And also, baseball, football, basketball are super organized. We are the most unorganized sport on the face of the earth.
Right.
Everybody's in different directions. There's no governing rule. So it's we're a special case, I guess.
They just announced the next class in the Boxing Hall of Fame. And I happen to agree with you 100%. You can't really no one can give me a good reason why Marlon Starling is not in the Hall of Fame. And I know that's something it's an issue with you as well.
It's unreal. It's unreal that he's not in, especially, like I say, when you compare to other people, and I don't want to name names. But there are certainly people in who were not a champion as long as he was. They didn't beat remotely the level of competition that he beat. They didn't have the longevity that he had. So many different aspects. I could, if we had to go on TV on a debate, I could go head to head with anyone on the voting committee on the planet Earth and lay it out for him and go, really, you got that guy and that guy and that guy, but not Marlon Starling, not Michael Nunn. Come on, it's insane. It really is. I don't know. I think a lot of guys on the voting committee, I think, are young. I think they're, no offense, but I think they're just fans. They're just strictly fans, and they're not versatile fans. They're fans of the last 15 years, maybe. You have guys like they'll say Mayweather's the best of all time. Guys that are on the committee, guys that are in charge of voting the greats in, they'll say Mayweather's the greatest of all time. Yet, not only they don't know who Henry Armstrong is. Like, it's not like they think Floyd's better. They don't know who Henry is to say he's better. So that would be like saying LeBron James, the best basketball player of all time, but I've never heard of Larry Bird. I've never heard of Larry Bird, but I think LeBron is the best because he's on TV a lot and he's been in a couple commercials and he's, people say he is. So I just go with what they say. So I think we have a lot of issues in that regard, and they're all related.
Have you talked to anyone? Do you know anyone on the committee that agrees with you? Have you ever gotten an answer why guys like Marlon Starling aren't in?
I've gotten nonsense. I've gotten double talk. To me, it's clear. It's simple. It's very simple. If my car is white and I tell you to go pick it up for me, it's white. I'm not going to say pick up the green car. I'm going to say pick up the white car. Some things just are. And, so they give me reasons why Marlon isn't in. And I'm going, doesn't make sense. Like, not when this and that guy are in already, and then part of it is they want people who draw, people to Canastota. You know what I mean? You have to draw people. So it's gotten to be where, all right, these guys are these two particular guys are borderline. I could choose one or the other, but one of them is going to draw 10,000 people and one of them is going to draw 17. So we got to get the guy with the 10,000. And that's just the way it is. So we need a Hall of Fame. It's almost like they need to change it to the Hall of Recognition.
Right.
The Hall, change the name, because even Hall of Fame, it's not Hall of Fame. It's not because you're famous. Adrian Broner's famous, but I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, regardless of 4 world titles. I'll take Hagler's 1 over his 4 all day, every single day of my life.
Right.
So, I think the Hall of Fame is a misleading, title. It should be the Hall of Accomplishment, the Hall of Greatness. Fame is only a small part of it. There's a lot of guys that aren't famous that are greater than people that are really famous.
Yeah. It's a shame that people don't remember him or know who he is, because I remember him growing up, and he lost a couple of close decisions to Donald Curry when Donald Curry was at the height of his game. And like you said, for him to beat Breland the way he did when no one picked him to.
And he's in trouble right now.
He is being caught.
He has been hit with power punches about 6, and he's hurt. And
There it is. He is down with 2 minutes. Starling wins it. After a minute and 10 seconds with the count, there's a guy that since 1979 has won the title, and he has gotten it.
Even jumping up to 160 and giving Michael Nunn one of the toughest fights he had had. It's a shame that more people don't remember him for what he did.
Not just that. Here is the impressive thing to me. I mean, beating Breland was titanic at the time. Like, nobody thought Mark Breland was ever going to lose at that time. Now, but here's the thing. Marlon did something many, many times that guys today will never do, will never dare do. And that, as a contender, he risked his top 10 ranking repeatedly fighting in non-title fights. And when I say non-title, I mean non-world title. They were for NABF and USBA titles. But, I mean, he fought Tommy Ayers when Tommy Ayers was undefeated. He fought Jose Barrett when Jose Barrett was undefeated, I think, with all knockouts. He fought Kevin Howard. He fought Floyd Mayweather Sr. twice. He fought all these killers and beat them, and didn't get the credit. I mean, beating Tommy Ayers back at that time, just so many guys that he beat is unbelievable. And they weren't for world titles. Now, guys don't want to fight that level of competition unless there's a world title on the line. They go, oh, everybody's a businessman. Like, oh, the risk versus the reward. Like, oh, man, you came up in the right era, because you came up where you belong, because you don't belong in the Marlon Starling, Marvin Hagler era. You don't belong there.
I follow you on social media. You're very open with your life on social media. I have to tell you that I really think there should be a show with you and your Aunt Fran, because you guys are hilarious. And for anyone that sees this, follow John Scully. I'll put your social media up, but tell me a little bit about her. And you guys you're like a comedy team.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm 54. I have a picture of her and I in front of her house when I was 1 year old, and she's holding me in her arms. I have the picture, and so we go back. We go back a little ways, and she's one of 6 kids. My father's sister, and she's the only one left. She's 90, just about 90 years old. Matter of fact, she turns 90 like less than a month. So she's basically 90 years old. She's just from a different era, but she's funny. I'll tell you, and I ask her about this a lot because I want to see if she changes her story. She says in her entire school career, she never missed a day of school, from kindergarten to graduation, never missed a day of school. never missed a day of work in her life from 18 to 62 or whatever. So I'm always like, well, why? Like, take it out. She goes, hey, you want to make money, you got to work, and but they grew up in the Depression. So
Right.
back then she tells me stories. It's like a movie. She tells me stories of her. I thought she was joking at first, but she's serious. She said she used to collect blueberries out of a field, put them in a bucket or a basket or whatever, and she would take them house to house and sell them. And people would buy, back in the 30s, people would buy blueberries.
Wow.
So, and my father used to tell me stories. My father told me back then a returnable bottle was a nickel. Even today it's a nickel. He said he had a Coke bottle and it had tar in it. He said he soaked it for I think he said a year in kerosene to get the tar out so that he could get the nickel.
Wow.
A year. I mean, he did it for a year because a nickel was, big money back then, and they were poor. So she comes from that mentality, that era. But she's really funny. She's really she's way better than I am. Like she cares. When we drive by, sometimes I catch it on film and I'm like, are you crazy? Like she waves to the like if we drive by a construction site or a police officer director, she waves, and she slows down, has me slow down, and she'll wave. And I'm like, man, they don't care. Like they just want you to drive by. No, it's nice. She wants to wave to everybody and say hello. So that's her. So it's fun. It's fun. I have a good time with her.
You just posted something, I think a few days ago. It was a picture of a parking lot and the gym you used to train in. And in the post, you talked about how that's where your father used to sit and wait for you every day to pick you up from the gym.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance to your dad, just to not only to your boxing career, but to your life?
Right. Well, my mother and father got divorced when I was, I believe, 4 or 5. And it's funny. I remember the day he left. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew it wasn't good. And I remember exactly where I was in the house watching him drive away. I saw his car going and I'm just like, I thought I would never see him again. I thought I didn't know how divorce worked, but I thought at that age, I thought that was it. We're done. I'm never going to see my father again. And he moved to a motel, which at the time, I didn't realize it, but it was a grimy, miserable motel. It was the type of place where hookers would live there. Guys out of prison would live there. Like when they'd come out of jail, the state would put them there. So he lived there in a room that was so small. I didn't realize it as a kid, but a few years ago, I went by there. They just tore it down last year, but I went by a couple years ago and I asked the lady, I go, could I go in this room? My father used to live in here. Can I look at it? And she opened the door. It was the smallest, tiniest room you could imagine. I couldn't believe it was so much smaller than I remembered it. And I'm like, man, this guy lived here for like 17 years, or whatever it was, 20 years. But sometimes I spent whole summers there. Every weekend, I spent certainly every weekend, but a lot of times complete summers. And it was a different, I almost had like two worlds. I lived in two worlds. I lived in a town which was one town over, and it was a middle-class town, 30,000 people. I lived in a house. We had a yard. There was a park across the street. I lived there with my mother and brother. But on the weekends, I'm down in this place with, there's drugs everywhere. There's prostitutes everywhere. There's, but I'm out there as a 10-year-old with these people, like talking to them. And one guy's telling me about jail and he's telling me how it works. And as I'm 10 years old, I'm getting lessons on how to act if I ever go to prison, and just a lot of crazy stuff happened. But I wouldn't change it for anything. I'm glad I got exposed to that kind of life. Truth be told, it was the type of place. And again, my father did this because he wanted to be close to his sons, so he could have went somewhere else in a nicer place, but it was literally like a mile and a half away. So he wanted to be close just in case anything happened. I'm actually glad that I grew up like that. I got to understand how it is to live on different levels, and so he inadvertently gave me a lesson that I didn't ask for. He was a salesman. He would drive to Rhode Island. He would drive to New London, Connecticut. He was all over the highways, going store to store. He used to go to convenience stores and bring them, take orders for candy, soda, cigarettes, things like that, chips. So that was his job. So he would pick me up every day from 1982 to 1986. And he would bring me to the gym, same time every day. He would go in the parking lot across the street. He would read his papers, and every night when I came out, he'd be asleep, and I'd have to knock on the window to wake him up. And he'd drop me off at my house, and he'd go to his room, a couple miles away, and that was it. So, at the time, I didn't truly realize it. It's just what your father does. I didn't realize it. When I look back on it, I say, man, that was kind of crazy. I mean, it's pretty intense. Every day for several years. And, I'm writing a book. I'll probably never finish it, but, I wanted to pay a tribute to him, but something told me he's getting older. And I said, I need to let him know, because I'm probably not going to finish this book in time. And, so when I got inducted into the Connecticut Hall of Fame it was either 2009 or 10, at the Mohegan Sun Casino. And so I did my speech. And so in the speech, I mentioned that. I tell that story. And so the crowd got to hear it, but he got to hear it. So I was able to tell him part of what I wanted him to know that I recognized.
Right. Well, I have read that you want to do a book, and I think that you should definitely put some effort into that, because I think it would be a hell of a book. Thank
you. Yeah, I have some good stories. I definitely, I think, and I'll tell you how it started. I used to be on this, back in the day, America Online, AOL. The chat rooms on AOL are legendary. I mean, legendary. And I've talked, and I verified. I talked to Zab Judah in there, Mike Rossman, Sugar Ray Leonard. I had Sugar Ray Leonard in there. I brought him in, and he wanted to talk about something, whatever, but he didn't want people to know it was him. Right. And after a while, I said, Ray, they're going to figure out it's you, because of your screen name and different things. So you got to change that, make up a name. And he didn't know how to do it. So I had to teach him how to change the screen name, and so he went in there. So he's arguing with people about the fight with Hagler and the negotiations for a rematch. And they're telling him, because they don't know it's him, they're telling him he doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm like, all right. I said, listen, guys, trust me. I know this guy. He knows what was going on at that time. So, but I couldn't tell them it was him. But what happened was I'd be in the chat room, and, a name would come up, like Roy Jones fight with James Toney. Like, oh yeah, I was there. I was with Roy, and I had just sparred with James before that. And so I tell little stories. And then, so after a while, people are like, man, you should put all these stories together in a book or something. And, we'd eat it up. And so I said, hey, I started thinking about it. And I said, I have a lot of stories. And it's funny, because when they're your stories, you may not think so much of it. But when you tell someone the story and you see their reaction, you're like, all right, I'm on. I've got something here that people want. So I'm gonna hopefully be able to put them all in one condensed book and let people read them all at one time.
Well, I'll be getting that book when it comes out.
Thank you.
So you had 49 pro fights, I believe. Probably hundreds of amateur fights. And if this is too personal, let me know. But how is your health from all those years of boxing?
It's actually amazing. I don't feel any ill effects from boxing at all. Like, and here's the great, even more than all the fights and the level of competition. But I've sparred. My first time sparring was 1980.
Wow.
My last time sparring was 2 weeks ago. I've sparred every year for 41, 42 years. And I don't feel I have no aches, no pains. I have, all I have is a scar over my eye and a scar inside my lip. But in terms of stumbling, and it's funny because I was just talking the other day to a guy about this, a fellow fighter, and I say, man, I'm around fighters all the time, all year long, world champions, and I'm starting to see some of these guys who I looked up to when I was a kid, and I'm like, man, this guy can't even walk without his wife holding him up, and I see these guys, they can't even make a phone call. And I'm like, wow, boxing is really, really taking a toll on people. And so I really consider myself lucky because I think I talk clearly. I think I'm pretty on the ball. My memory is perfect. But I know a lot of guys that absolutely are not in the same boat as I am.
Your health is good, although you did post recently that you couldn't get away from the dreaded COVID, and you ended up. Did this just happened, right?
Yeah, like 2 days ago, and I didn't even know I had it. The only reason I know I have it is because I had to go to the doctor for like a checkup, and they require a COVID test before you come inside. I said, oh, yeah, no problem. And I took it, and they go, well, we're going to have to postpone your visit. You're COVID positive. And I said, really? And the first thing I did, I left the doctor's office and I went running. I ran, I did road work up this hill that I used to run when I was a fighter. And I always said that. I said, if I ever get COVID, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run that hill, and I'm going to try and run it out of me. I'm going to get rid of it. And that's what I did. I went and I ran the hill.
How'd you feel?
I feel perfect. I wouldn't know I have it if they didn't tell me. I'm actually wondering if it's a false positive because I feel fine. I really do. I do think part of it is, especially for my age, I'm in good shape. I can still spar, I can run, I can do all these things. A lot of people like growing up, they always said, you got to take care of yourself. And after a while, it's just like, oh yeah, they're just being careful. You got to take care. Everybody's got to take care of themselves. But really, I think we're starting to see you really have to take care of yourself, as you get older, because a lot of people are not making it through this COVID. People younger than I am, simply because they didn't take care of themselves. They're overweight, they're way out of shape, whatever the case may be. And, so this might be a wake-up call for a lot of people that they need to start jogging, walking, aerobics, whatever it is.
Who are some of the fighters today that you're excited to see, and fights that you want to see?
I would like to see Arthur and Canelo, of course. Arthur and Bivol, and actually, I think the biggest fight for me would be Arthur and Joe Smith. I think Joe Smith would be. Fight. It's not the biggest in terms of, the division, but it's the biggest in terms of, okay, if we want to see a really good fight, two guys who are gonna let it go, who it would be those guys, And I think, with all due respect, I think Arthur ends it very dramatically, but only because Joe is that type of guy. He's gonna jump headfirst into the fire, and so he would make it that kind of fight. Pretty much everybody at 135, if they would fight each other, that you can mix and match so many phenomenal fights. Spence and Crawford, they have to fight. It's almost like another Mayweather-Pacquiao situation where these two guys clearly should be fighting each other and they're not going to, for whatever reason. And that's why I never get into the boxing. You can ask me about the boxing business, and I don't know. I don't even I don't even discuss it with people because I don't care. Like, I don't care about who's signed with who, and that's why it's not fighting. I just want to know who's fighting who. And whatever the reason is, I'm sure it's business wise. Fighters aren't afraid. You know, people say, "Oh, so and so's afraid to fight so and so." No, he's not. This guy's a world champion, and he's not afraid of anything on earth. You know, but he's got to. You know, the business people have to do their thing. You know, for everything to work.
And I'm kind of bouncing around, but I know that you never had aspirations to turn pro. That you wanted to stay as an amateur, but you did turn pro. You fought some big names. Talk to me about the night you challenged for the light heavyweight title. That's another fighter that a lot of people may have forgotten, Henry Mask, who was a very underrated fighter. You were in his backyard in Germany. Tell me about that whole event, you know, fighting for the title, which I'm sure was a dream.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, it's funny when I was growing up and you see people fighting on TV, even just, you know, Saturday afternoon fights, Tyrone Crawley against Robin Blake, you know, whoever. And I just always assumed that everybody came into the fights perfect. They had perfect training camp. They're in great shape. Everybody, you know, you're seeing their best. As a pro, I realized very few times have I ever been at my best. Very few, you know, and I remember Mark Breland saying that once early in his career. He goes, out of my, you know, 27 pro fights, whatever, there's been one that I went into without some type of issue. And, you know, and it's very true. So with that said, when I fought Henry Maske, my mother was actually sick with cancer at the time. She was a few months away from dying. So, and I knew she was going to die. I knew that was coming. And she was paralyzed. She had both her legs amputated. She had a breast removed. You know, it was not pleasant. So when I was in training camp in Florida, I was getting ready, and this is not, I don't want anybody to think this is an excuse. It's not. I'm just throwing things out there, backstory. So when I was going to Germany, the morning we were leaving for Germany, I called my mother. I always call my mother early in the morning. I do my road work on the beach, and then there's a payphone there, and I would go call my mother. So we're leaving that day, like at 4 p.m, we're flying out to Germany. And when I called my house that morning, the police answered the phone. And they said, oh, you know, they took your mother to the emergency room this morning. She was unresponsive. And I'm like, all right, so what do I do? Do I fly home right now? Or do I cancel the fight? Do I go? And then when the fight happens, you know, I'm going to have to go home anyway. You know, I didn't know.
The week of the fight?
It was probably however long before the fight I went out there, 10 days, you know, so whatever day I was leaving the United States, of all days. Wow. Police answered the phone. They said, oh, your mother's in the emergency room. And so, you know, so I went to Germany. I went anyway. And it's funny, I almost hate to tell these type of things because people say, oh, you're just making excuses. I said, no, I'm not. Like, I'm giving you a factor. Things that happened. I'm not even saying that's why I lost. I'm just saying that if I get hit by a car that day, I should mention it. You know, I should say, yeah, I got, at 3 o'clock, I got hit by a bus. You know, so I get there, and here's where, as a trainer, I've learned things, and these are the type of things you need to know as a trainer, which my trainer obviously didn't know. So we get there. Now, when you get to Germany, when you fly to Germany from the United States, you get there at like 7 a.m, 8 a.m. That's when you land. You fly all night. So we get there at like, you know, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. So by the time we get to the hotel, it's 9:30, 10 o'clock. Been up all night, you know, on the plane. You're excited and everything. So you got the whole day, and you have to train that night. So I went instinctively. I just went to bed. So I got to go to bed. Well, big mistake. And I remember years later, Emmanuel Stewart of all people told me, he said, you messed up, because if you ever go again, when you get there in the morning, no matter how tired you are, stay awake all day and then go to bed at 9 o'clock that night. I didn't do that. I went to bed woke up at 8 o'clock at night, and then was up all night. So I was literally up all night every night. So, which is bad enough, but the night before the fight, so I'm wide awake. I'm awake all night till like 7 in the morning. And I was literally at 4 in the morning, I'm walking around, I'm almost in tears. Like I'm almost crying because I'm just like, it's insane. Like I have to go to sleep. Like I want to go to sleep.
Right.
This is insane. So, I finally fell asleep like 8 o'clock or whatever. But with that being said, Henry was very talented, very methodical. He was methodical, but he was good with it. He was good because he was 6'4". He's southpaw. He was like, if you were to say, okay, make a list of everything you don't want to face, he would check all the boxes. He'd be that guy I didn't want to face. Just very tall and nobody, literally, one thing I'll say about Germany, England, places like that, their fans are their fans. Like their fans are, I went there the first day I got there, I went to the mall next to my hotel and I go into a department store and they had towels hanging. Now, normally when you see towels and it'll be like Mickey Mouse, a beach towel, it'll be Mickey Mouse. And, these towels had Henry Maskey on the towels. And I'm going, okay, so this guy's, he's big. He's big. Right. He's big. One thing about him that was different than most people I was able to box with. Most people if I was having difficulty with them, I could get them to fight a little more if I needed that. I could talk trash or, whatever it is. Henry was the type of guy, he was focused on his game plan, and the idea that you could get him out of his game plan was just like ridiculous. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was trying to get him to fight on the inside, and he's like, no, stay behind the jab, and he fought a perfect fight. And all things considered, I just found it very hard to hit him solid. I caught him a lot on the top of the head, the neck. It was hard to hit him flush. He was very, very slick and methodical.
I saw you doing another interview recently, and I'm not bringing up your losses, just so you know that. But you talked about the Drake Thadsby fight. I didn't hear the whole story, but you were saying that you were contemplating leaving before that fight even happened.
Yeah.
I know you lost that fight, but what was the story behind the Drake Thadsby fight?
Well, it was kind of a culmination of things because my whole boxing career, from amateur all the way to I can remember in 1986 at the Nationals, losing 7.5 pounds the night before the first weigh-in, spitting into a cup and all the different things, so making weight was a common thing. It was a frequent thing. When I fought Drake, I had to make weight, and I for the first time in my career, what I did was I didn't weigh myself at all. I never got on the scale. All I did was I said, I'm going to train hard. I'm not going to eat that much. I'm going to, suck weight, and whatever I weigh, I weigh. And I thought for sure I was going to come into that fight. I thought I would weigh about 170 pounds. Like I thought I was going to be really light. And one thing that actually gave me confidence was right before the fight, I walk in the gym and one of the kids, Sammy Vega, he's one of my boxers, and he said to me like, man, Scully, you're skinny. I go, yeah. I took it as a compliment. I was like, yeah, right. Yeah, I'm going to be light, So I go to the gym. The first time I weighed myself for that fight was the day before the weigh-in. On the way to the gym, on the way to the fight in Boston, I stopped off at my gym to weigh myself. So it was like the big unveiling. I was 183.5 pounds. And I literally slammed the scale down because I thought my trainer had done it wrong. And I was mad. And I said, come on, man, do it right. Do it right. And he's like, what do you want me to do? It's 183.5, and so I'm like, this isn't, look at me. Like, look at me. I'm a ghost. I'm a dead man. How can I lose all this weight, 8.5 pounds? And so I said to him, man, what do I do? And all he said was, Just do the best you can. Now, I misinterpreted what he meant. He told me after the fight what he meant, but what I took that to mean was lose the weight, like get it off, whatever you can do, however you have to do it. So I went that night and I was on a mission, and I actually lost a pound too much. I came in a pound under.
Wow.
So the weigh-in happened. A bunch of stuff happened, but I'll tell you the big one. It's kind of, I can laugh at it now, but I get on the scale. I look terrible, physically. I look like a Skeletor. So we're walking back to the hotel with the fighters, couple fighters, and one of their father-in-laws was there. And he doesn't know. And this is why I'm a big proponent. Don't have people around you before a fight that don't know boxing, because they're going to say something or do something that you're not going to like, and they're not going to know they did it. So one of the fighters asked me, "Oh, how do you feel?" Now, you could get hit by lightning an hour before that. Any fighter in the world in that position is going to say, "I feel great." Like, don't even bother asking, because they're gonna say they feel great. There's nothing else to say. So I say, "Oh, I feel good." The father-in-law says, he goes, "You feel good?" He goes, "You look like death warmed over." and I'm like, I couldn't even be mad. I couldn't even be mad at him, because I knew, but all I thought was, well, if this idiot figured it out, then everybody knows. Drake knows, Goody Petronelli knows, everybody knows. So it was no secret. So when I got the day of the fight, I had to go later. Our whole team went over earlier because they had prelim fights. So I'm the main event, so I don't have to go for another couple hours. So I spent that whole couple hours sitting on my bed in the hotel, literally talking out loud. I'm having a conversation with myself, and I'm saying, all right, I'm going home. This is stupid. Like, this is crazy. I can't fight tonight. I'm going to get killed. And I pick up my bag to leave. And then I sit down, like, I can't leave. Like, they'll blackball me from boxing if I do this to ESPN. And then I go, well, it was almost like I was bipolar, two-person. I'm like, well, I'm talking to myself, and I'm going, well, if I leave, I'm not going to fight anymore anyway. I retired. So they're not going to be able to keep me off TV. So I did that for like 2 hours, just up and down, up and down, up and down. And I'm thinking, all I could think is, my father's waiting for me at my house, sitting on the couch watching this fight. He's going to have a heart attack when I walk through that door. And because it was a 2-hour drive. So eventually I went to the fight, and I went in there just literally, if there's any place on earth, Iraq, the battlefield, a nuclear power plant, and that ring, those are the three places I had no business being. And looking back, if I could go back in time, because there was no point to it. Like, there was no point. I was pressured into it because I didn't have anybody to talk to. So I had to debate with myself.
Right.
Like, if I was the trainer, if I was my trainer and I was there, I would have been like, are you insane? Like, there's no chance you're fighting tonight. There's not a prayer. I'm not allowing you to fight. But I had nobody to ask. So a fighter is always going to eventually overrule himself. If he gets hit by a bus at 3, he's going to fight at 7 still. So that's what happened. And, it was probably the worst, other than my mother dying. That was probably the worst day of my life.
Well, again, I don't mean to talk about all negative things. So from your pro career, what was the best memory, fight memory that you had from your pro career?
I mean, I had a lot of good ones. I'll tell you a funny, couple funny ones. Like, I fought a guy named Alfonso Bailey. We fought on USA Tuesday Night Fights. He was very good, very strong. But the thing was, I knew him. It's funny, it'll show you the psychology of boxers and what we really go through. I used to have trouble. This is when I was making 160. I never should have been a 160. My manager at the time, he was forcing me to make 160. So I make 160. So I got to make 60 for this fight. I didn't want to make it. I didn't want to make it at all. So at one point during the fight, I mean, before the fight, a few weeks before the fight, I actually was gonna break my finger with a hammer, so I didn't have to fight. Okay, I went in the garage
because you didn't want to fight at
I
160.
went in the garage. Yeah. I went in the garage. I had the hammer in my hand. To be honest with you, I chickened out. I couldn't take the pain, so I didn't want. I said I got to find another way. So, and Alfonso, like I say, I really respected him. At one time, he was the #1 ranked amateur in the country. He had beaten Dwight Davison, who was #1 contender by the WBC. And I had seen Alfonso spar Simon Brown right before that. So I said, this guy's good, man. I got of all the guys I got to fight, and I got to fight this freaking guy. So I got to make the weight and everything, and I fight probably maybe the best fight of my pro career. Like I fought certainly top three of my fights. I just hit a groove and I was flowing and I got stronger as it went and I ended up winning a unanimous decision on television. And I remember I had a kid who I just talked to yesterday. He's like 38 years old now. He was like 8 then or whatever. Kid I trained, he was there and you can see him on TV. He was in the audience watching me. And so it was like, I always say, I've won fights and I've lost fights on TV, on the big stage. And don't anybody tell you different. Winning is way better than losing. Every aspect of it. And, the glow that you bask in for, that day and the next day and the next week. And so that fight always stood out to me. Like I just felt I felt like a pro fighter. I felt good. I made the weight pretty decent at the end and I fought well. And so I of all my fights, I look back on that one as probably my happiest moment.
Wow. You talked about the Thaddeus fight and that you had no one to talk to when you were going through tough times. How has that helped you now that you're a trainer? What kind of approach do you have with the fighters that you work with? Because I'm sure you learn from your experiences.
100%. 100%. Like, listen, me as a trainer, I always tell people, I'm not a trainer who trains boxers. I'm a fighter who trains fighters. I know everything about this sport in terms of the psychology, what you're going through. And I'm not bragging. I'm just right. Telling you what it is. Like, I've been in the fights in the corners. I see a guy make a face and I know what he means. I know exactly why he made that exact face. And I'll tell him, and I had a guy one time after the fight, a couple of days later, he's like, man, he goes, how did you know that's what I was thinking? I go, I've been there. Trust me, I've been in your situation, good and bad and ugly and everything. So I've been able to use my experiences, good and bad, to help these guys. I understand what it is to be hurt. I understand pain. I understand going into a fight you're not ready for. I understand all those aspects of it, so I can relate and try and help these guys navigate. So one of my best attributes isn't necessarily like, if you talk about a good trainer, you say, yeah, Floyd Mayweather Sr. is great with the defense, and Emmanuel Stewart's great with the offense. And to me, my most utilized role is as like a psychologist, a psychiatrist, the guy to talk to, because I'm gonna know everything you're feeling. I already know without you telling me. And so I think that's my greatest gift as a trainer.
You have to come out with this book, because I could talk to you for days and days and days. But I'll start to wrap it up. What's next for you? I mean, I'm sure you still have goals in the game. You're still training fighters. What are you up to nowadays, and what are your goals in the sport?
Well, I'm obviously I'm working with Beterbiev when he fights, and we're hoping obviously for the major fights for him. I'm training a light heavyweight by the name of Richie Rivera. They call him Popeye. He's undefeated. I just can't say exactly, but I just got a call. Actually, the guy was calling me while we're doing this interview, so I'll have to call him back after about a possible very big fight for him. And I have Yves Ulysses, who, if you ever seen him, he beat Cletus Selden on HBO a few years ago. He's out of Montreal. I'm training him. Very good fighter, very good skills, 140 pounds. So I'm working with him. And then I work with amateurs at a gym in Hartford called the Charter Oak Boxing Academy, which is COBA for short. I'm training kids there. We have a lot of kids, like 40 kids that come every day. So I'm busy. I'm busy on all levels, I guess you could say. I'm waiting to hear maybe do some broadcasting again. I'm doing a lot of writing and raising money to help certain fighters. So I'm kind of getting my hands in all the different pots.
Right. Well, it's obvious that you have a deep love and passion for the sport. It comes through when you talk. And again, I'm one of many who will definitely buy that book when it comes out. So I hope that happens. I hope you get over this COVID, even though you're not feeling anything. I hope it stays like that. Maybe it was a false positive, but I'm hoping that this is a good year from you, and I look forward to talking to you again.
I appreciate it, and I'll come back anytime. Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Oh, and let me just tell you that magazine behind you, that's Sugar Ray Leonard, right?
Yes, sir.
I have that one. I have that. There's an article on Lynn Swan in there called Champagne, Roses, and Donuts. And it ends and it says it's sunny and 88 again in Pittsburgh. And it's funny because Swan and Leonard were like my two favorite guys from that year. And they're both in that magazine that you have right there.
It's funny, but that cover that I have when I was at HBO, a lot of people, I guess some of the executives, they would clean out their offices from time to time. And everything you see on the walls back here, it was people at HBO were cleaning their offices out, and they would put things in the common room at HBO that were, if you wanted to take them, take them. I took them. Everything that's here, you don't want this picture of Mike Tyson knocking out Michael Spinks? I'll take it. And,
that's amazing.
So that stuff, that was all from when I worked at HBO that people, for whatever reason, didn't want. I wanted it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You're in the right place at the right time.
Absolutely. All right, my friend. Well, I look forward to talking to you again, and be safe and get over that COVID. And what's the light heavyweight's name again that you're training?
Richie Rivera.
Richie Rivera?
Yeah,
and
they call him Popeye.
Does he have anything coming up, or you said you're working on that?
They're working on it right now. As soon as I'm done with you, I'm going to call the promoter right now and find out what's going on.
All right. Well, I'll let you get to your business, but I appreciate the time, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, my friend.